chained to a drowning house. With floodwaters rising fast, everyone thought this German shepherd had no chance to survive. But then, a stranger appeared. What she did next will restore your faith in humanity. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. In the small town of Belchaz, Louisiana, the Mississippi River overflowed its banks, swallowing homes, roads, and everything in its path. People packed up their lives in trucks, fleeing the flood. Sirens echoed in the distance, warning everyone to evacuate, but not everyone made it out in time. At the edge of a sinking neighborhood, a German shepherd named Max was chained to the porch of an abandoned house. His fur was soaked, his body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The water lapped at his paws, inching higher with every hour. His brown eyes scanned the empty street, but no one came. His owner had left him behind. Max barked, his voice raw and desperate, but only the rushing floodwaters answered. His chain was short, giving him just enough room to stand on the porch. There was no food, no shelter, only fear and the endless sound of rain. Across town, Emma Carver, a 35-year-old nurse, was helping evacuate elderly residents from a nursing home. She moved quickly, her heart pounding not just from adrenaline, but from the memories clawing at her mind. Years ago, during Hurricane Isaac, she had lost her own German shepherd. A beautiful dog named Riley, swept away in a flood before help could arrive. She had promised herself she would never let that happen to another dog if she could help it. As Emma drove a borrowed rescue truck down the half-flooded streets, her headlights caught movement, a flash of tan and black struggling against a chain. She slammed the brakes. "No, no, not again," she whispered, her chest tightening. Without thinking twice, Emma grabbed a rope and waded into the cold, waist-deep water. Rain pummeled her face, but she kept her eyes locked on Max. The dog barked again, pulling hard against the chain. Desperate but wary, Emma's heart shattered at the sight. "It's okay, boy," she called out, her voice trembling. "I'm coming, I promise." The flood current tugged at her legs, threatening to sweep her off balance. She stumbled once but caught herself. Every step toward Max felt like a battle, against the water, the fear, the memories of the past. Finally, she reached the porch. Max growled low, a mixture of fear and hope. But when Emma knelt and extended her hand, he sniffed it hesitantly. His body was shivering so hard it broke her heart. "It's okay," Emma said again, fumbling with the soaked, rusted chain. But then, she heard it. The house behind Max groaned. The porch creaked. The structure was about to give way. Emma's hands flew to the chain, struggling to unhook it as the wood beneath Max's paws started to crumble. Would she be able to free him in time? The porch beneath Max groaned louder, tilting toward the water as the current grew stronger. Emma's fingers, numb from the cold, fought with the heavy metal clasp around his collar. It was old, rusted, and stubborn. Come on," she muttered through gritted teeth. Max whimpered, sensing the danger. He pawed frantically at the air, trying to back away, but the chain yanked him tight against the porch railing. His eyes, wide, terrified, locked onto Emma's. Somehow he trusted her, even though his body shook with fear. With a final tug, the clasp broke free. Emma barely had time to react before the porch collapsed with a deafening crack. Max yelped as the structure gave way, plunging them both into the icy water. The cold hit Emma like a punch to the gut. She gasped, her arms instinctively wrapping around Max's body. He struggled for a moment, panicked, but she held him tight, speaking into his soaked fur. I've got you, stay with me." The current was stronger than she expected, dragging them both toward a submerged pickup truck. Emma kicked furiously, fighting to keep both their heads above water. Max, sensing her determination, stopped struggling and tried to paddle with her. But the rescue truck was several blocks away, and the water was rising fast. Emma spotted a mailbox sticking out above the flood and swam toward it, using it as a temporary anchor. She wrapped one arm around it and clung to Max with the other. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but she refused to let go. Above them, the rain blurred the sky into a sheet of gray. Around them, the world seemed silent except for the roar of the water. Emma pressed her forehead against Max's soaked fur, feeling his chest rise and fall against her. He was alive, terrified, exhausted, but alive. "I'm not losing you," she whispered fiercely. "Not this time." Somewhere in the distance, a boat's engine sputtered to life. Emma's heart leapt. She waved one arm frantically, screaming for help. Max barked hoarsely beside her, as if joining in. The small rescue boat, driven by 2 volunteer firefighters, turned toward the sound. When they saw Emma and Max clinging desperately to the mailbox, they pushed the engine to full throttle. "Hold on," one of them shouted over the noise. The boat skidded through the water, pulling up alongside them. Strong hands reached down, grabbing Max first and hauling him into the boat. Emma followed, collapsing in a soaked heap on the floor. For a long moment, she just lay there, panting, unable to believe they had made it. Max crawled over, resting his heavy head in her lap. Emma looked down at him, this abandoned, betrayed creature, and felt her chest tighten with overwhelming emotion. "You're safe now," she whispered, running her trembling fingers through his wet fur. But deep down, Emma knew their journey had just begun. Because saving Max from the flood was only the beginning. Healing his broken spirit would be a battle all its own. The rescue boat sped through the flooded streets, weaving between submerged cars and toppled trees. Emma sat hunched on the floor, her arms wrapped protectively around Max. His body was stiff, trembling uncontrollably, despite being out of the freezing water. Every bump the boat hit made Max flinch. Every sudden sound made him shrink against her. It broke Emma's heart to see him like that, so raw, so broken. As they pulled up to the emergency shelter set up in a dry part of town, Emma realized she couldn't just leave Max there like a piece of lost property. Most pets at the shelter were separated into metal cages, wet and shivering, waiting for owners, who might never return. She couldn't do that to him, not after what they had been through together. Emma approached a volunteer in a yellow rain jacket, explaining what happened. The woman gave her a sad smile and nodded. "If you're willing to foster him until things settle down," she said, "it would be a huge help. He's traumatized. Poor boy doesn't need another cage right now." Without hesitation, Emma signed the papers. Max was officially under her care, at least. For now, they made their way to Emma's battered old truck. Max tried to jump into the back seat but hesitated halfway, looking back at her with wide, uncertain eyes. Emma gently lifted him the rest of the way, her muscles straining under his weight. "Easy, buddy. I've got you." During the drive home, Max stayed curled into a tight ball on the seat, his eyes darting nervously at every passing light and noise. Emma kept glancing over, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavy on her chest. She lived alone in a small cottage at the edge of town, a simple place with a wide backyard and, thankfully, no flood damage. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, dry, and safe. When they arrived, Max hesitated at the door, sniffing the threshold, like he couldn't believe he was allowed inside. Emma knelt down beside him, meeting him eye to eye. "You're home now," she said softly. At first, Max paced the house restlessly, his nails clicking against the wooden floor. He sniffed every corner, inspected every shadow, as if searching for threats. Emma let him be. She knew trust couldn't be rushed. After a while, she set out a bowl of fresh water and some leftover roasted chicken. The only thing she had on hand. The smell caught Max's attention. He crept forward, eyes flicking between Emma and the food. Finally, hunger won. He devoured the chicken in minutes, then looked up at her, a tiny flicker of something different in his eyes. Not fear, but gratitude. Emma smiled, blinking back tears. "Yeah, me too, buddy, me too." That night, she set up a thick blanket by the fireplace, hoping Max would feel comfortable enough to sleep. She watched him from the couch, too wired to rest herself. Max circled the blanket several times, then laid down heavily, letting out a long, shuddering sigh. For the first time in days, Emma allowed herself to exhale too. They had both survived. But survival was only the beginning. Emma knew from experience that trauma left deep scars, scars that didn't heal overnight. Max would need time, patience, and something he may not even realize he deserved yet: unconditional love. Outside, the rain finally slowed to a soft drizzle. Inside, the room was filled with the warm crackle of the fire and the slow, steady breathing of a dog who had been given a second chance. But just as Emma closed her eyes, a loud knock rattled the door. Max bolted upright, his body tense and ready. Emma's heart pounded. Who would come here in the middle of the night during a flood? And what did they want? The knock came again, harder this time, echoing through the little house like a gunshot. Max stood rigid, a low, guttural growl rumbling from deep in his chest. His ears were pinned back, his body tense. Emma rose slowly from the couch, heart hammering against her ribs. "Easy, boy," she whispered, though her own voice trembled. She crept to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see outside. A figure stood on the porch. A man, soaked from head to toe. A battered baseball cap pulled low over his face, and then Emma's stomach twisted into knots. She recognized him. It was Roy Henley, Max's original owner, the same man who had left him chained and helpless during the flood. Emma's fists clenched. She had heard rumors about Roy, that he ran a backyard breeding operation, that he treated his dogs like disposable property. Seeing him now, standing on her porch like he had a right to be there, filled her with cold fury. Max barked sharply, his body lunging forward. Emma grabbed his collar gently, trying to soothe him, though every fiber of her being was screaming too. The man pounded again. "Hey!" Roy shouted through the door. "That's my dog!" "You got no right to." Emma's mind raced. Legally, Max was still registered under Roy's name. The paperwork at the shelter was only temporary foster documents. If Roy demanded him back, there was a chance the law would be on his side. The thought made Emma sick. She opened the door just a crack, keeping her body firmly between Max and the man. "You abandoned him," she said coldly. "You chained him to drown." Roy scoffed, wiping rainwater from his face. "It was a mistake. Things got crazy with the flood. I didn't mean to leave him." Emma stared at him, searching for any sign of sincerity. She found none. "You don't deserve him," she said quietly, her voice shaking with restrained anger. Roy stepped closer. "You don't get to decide that, lady. He's mine." Behind her, Max whined softly, a heartbreaking sound full of confusion and fear. Emma looked back at him, seeing the way his body pressed against the doorframe, torn between fight and flight. This wasn't just about legal ownership. This was about what was right. Drawing a deep breath, Emma squared her shoulders. "Leave," she said firmly. "If you care about him at all, let him stay where he's safe." Roy's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Emma thought he might push his way in. Her muscles tensed, ready to fight if she had to. But then, with a sneer, Roy spat on the porch and turned away. "You'll be hearing from me," he growled over his shoulder before disappearing into the night. Emma slammed the door and locked it, her whole body trembling. She sank to the floor, feeling the adrenaline drain out of her like a flood. Max crept over, his body low, his eyes wide with uncertainty. He nudged her arm with his wet nose, seeking reassurance. Emma hugged him tightly. "It's okay, boy. I'm not letting him take you," she whispered fiercely. "I promise." Max whimpered softly. Then, for the first time, licked her cheek. It wasn't much, but it was enough to know he understood. They were in this fight together now, and Emma swore no matter what it took, she would protect him with everything she had. But deep down, she knew Roy wasn't going to give up so easily. The next morning, the rain had finally stopped. The town of Belfast looked like a ghost town. Mud-covered cars abandoned in the streets, houses half swallowed by water, debris scattered everywhere. But Emma barely noticed any of it. Her mind was consumed by one thought. Roy would be back. She sipped coffee at the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly. Max sat by her feet, his head resting on her knee. His touch was grounding, reminding her why she couldn't back down. Emma knew she needed help, fast. After a quick search on her old laptop, she found a local animal rights lawyer offering free consultations for flood victims. Within an hour, she was sitting across from Maya Jennings, a sharp-eyed woman with a calm, fierce energy. "You've got a strong case," Maya said after hearing Emma's story. If you can prove neglect or abandonment, you can petition for full custody. Emma's heart lifted. There was hope, but, Maya added, leaning forward, if Roy files a formal claim before you do, the law might side with him by default. He technically still owns Max, on paper. Emma's stomach dropped. You need evidence, Maya said. Pictures, witnesses, anything. That shows he left that dog to die. Emma thought hard. There had been others in the neighborhood, people evacuating, volunteers. Someone must have seen Max chained up during the flood. Before she left, Maya handed her a folder. Inside was the paperwork needed to file an emergency petition. You don't have much time, she warned. Emma spent the afternoon driving through the muddy streets, knocking on doors, asking questions. Most homes were abandoned, but at a corner house, an older woman named Mrs. Green answered. When Emma explained what happened, Mrs. Green's eyes softened. I saw that poor dog, she said. I saw him chained up while the waters were rising. I told that man, you're Roy Tata, to take the dog with him. He just shrugged and drove off. Emma's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Would you be willing to make a statement? Mrs. Green nodded firmly. Anything for that sweet boy. With the witness statement and photos of the flooded property where Max had been chained, Emma rushed back to town and filed the paperwork. It felt like a small victory, but the war was far from over. That night, Emma sat by the fireplace again, watching Max sleep. His breathing was slow, peaceful. His paws twitched occasionally, as if chasing something in his dreams. A soft knock startled her out of her thoughts. Not on the door, on the window. Emma froze. Max lifted his head, ears perked but didn't growl. He simply stared at the window, a low whine building in his throat. Emma rose slowly and peeked outside. There in the shadows stood Roy, but he wasn't alone. Beside him were two men, bigger, rougher looking, their intentions clear even in the dim light. Emma's blood turned cold. This wasn't a legal visit. This was something darker. Roy pounded once on the window, then motioned toward the door. Emma backed away, her heart thundering. She had fought so hard to save Max. She wasn't about to lose him now. Not like this. Grabbing her phone, she dialed 911 with shaking fingers. Outside, Roy and his men circled toward the back of the house. Max stood up, his body tense but unafraid. He moved to stand between Emma and the door, his eyes locked on the sound of danger. The rain started again. A slow, heavy drizzle, tapping, against the roof like a drumbeat of war. As flashing lights finally approached down the muddy road, Emma whispered under her breath to Max, and maybe to herself, "Hold on, boy. Help's coming." But would it arrive in time? The flashing red and blue lights illuminated the muddy street, cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. But Roy and his two companions didn't back down. Not immediately. They stood in the backyard halfway between Emma's house and the woods beyond, their figures shadowy and menacing in the rain. Emma stayed pressed against the door, her phone clutched. Tightly in her hand, Max stood beside her, his body rigid, his deep growl vibrating the floor beneath them. Then came the unmistakable sound of police car doors slamming. Officers rushed toward the backyard with flashlights and drawn voices. "Hands where we can see them. Now!" Roy shouted something Emma couldn't hear over the pounding rain, but his hands eventually went up. His two friends hesitated, and for a sickening moment, Emma thought they might run. But when one of the officers unholstered his taser, they dropped to their knees in the mud. Emma sagged against the doorframe, her knees weak with relief. Max barked once, a sharp, triumphant sound. The officers cuffed Roy and his men quickly. One of them, a young deputy with a square jaw and kind eyes, approached Emma's front porch. "You the one who called?" he asked. Emma nodded wordlessly. He gave her a nod of reassurance. "You did the right thing. This guy's got a record, cruelty charges, illegal breeding, you name it. We've been waiting for a reason to put him away for good." Emma's breath caught. It wasn't just about Max. Roy had hurt others too. The deputy knelt down, extending a hand toward Max, who sniffed it cautiously before allowing a brief pat on the head. "Good boy," the deputy said with a smile. You're safe." Now, within an hour, the backyard was clear. The officers drove away with Roy and his friends in custody. The rain slowed to a mist and the sound fell silent again, except for the soft drip of water from the eaves. Emma closed the door, locked it, and slid down to the floor, exhausted. Max patted over and curled against her, resting his heavy head in her lap. She stroked his ears gently, whispering words of comfort she wasn't even sure he understood, but maybe deep down, he did. They had survived, together. The next few days blurred into a mix of court hearings, paperwork, and long, exhausted nights. But with Mrs. Green's testimony, the photographs, and the police report from the break-in attempt, the judge made it official. Max was no longer Roy's dog. He was Emma's. The day she signed the final adoption papers, Emma wept openly in the parking lot of the courthouse. Max's leash wrapped securely in her hand. "You're mine now, buddy," she whispered into his fur, "and I'm yours." Max licked her face, tail thumping against her side, as if he understood every word. They went home, their home. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma breathed easily. Over the weeks that followed, Max began to heal. At first, he flinched at loud noises, ducked away from sudden movements, and barked nervously whenever someone new approached. But Emma was patient. Every day, she showed him he was safe. She filled his world with gentle hands, warm beds, soft words, and endless love. Little by little, Max changed. He stopped pacing the house at night. He started greeting visitors with cautious curiosity instead of fear. And one sunny afternoon, he chased a ball across the backyard with such pure, unrestrained joy that Emma dropped into a lawn chair and cried. Tears of happiness this time. Watching him race through the grass, ears flopping, tongue lolling, she realized something powerful. Max hadn't just needed saving. He had saved her too. Before Max, Emma's life had been stuck in quiet grief. Mourning her old dog Riley, mourning the helplessness she had felt back then. But saving Max had reopened her heart in ways she hadn't even realized were still closed. They had both found their second chance. One night, months later, Emma sat by the fireplace again, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. Max lay stretched out in front of the fire, snoring softly, his paws twitching in a dream. The house felt warmer somehow, fuller, alive. Emma smiled, reaching down to run her fingers through Max's fur. "We found each other, didn't we, boy?" she whispered. Max's eyes blinked open and he thumped his tail once against the floor. Outside, the world could flood and rage all it wanted. Inside this little house, they were a family, and no storm could ever take that away. Spring came early to Belfast that year. The floodwaters had long receded, leaving behind green fields, and a town stitched back together by resilience. Neighbors helped rebuild homes, children played in the streets again, and gardens bloomed where the muddy wreckage had once been. At the center of it all, in a small white cottage on the edge of town, lived a woman and her dog, a living testament to survival, loyalty, and second chances. Emma sipped her morning coffee on the porch, watching Max chase butterflies in the backyard. His coat gleamed in the sunlight, strong and healthy now, a far cry from the half-drowned, trembling dog she had found months ago. Sometimes she still caught her breath when she looked at him. Not because of how broken he had been, but because of how beautifully he had healed. Max trotted over, dropping a slobbery tennis ball at her feet with a proud bark. Emma laughed, wiping her hands on her jeans. "You never get tired of this game, do you?" Max wagged his tail furiously, tongue lolling out the side of his mouth. Emma picked up the ball and threw it across the yard. Max bounded after it with the joy of a creature who finally knew he was safe, loved, and home. After their game, they set out for town. The farmer's market was bustling, a lively, colorful patchwork of people in stalls. Max walked proudly at Emma's side, wearing a bright blue bandana around his neck that read, "Rescued, loved, and home." Everywhere they went, people stopped to greet him. "That's the dog from the flood, isn't it?" a woman asked, reaching down to scratch behind Max's ears. "He's famous around here," Emma smiled warmly. "Yeah," she said, "that's him." Max accepted the attention graciously, his tail wagging. He was still, cautious around some strangers, especially loud or sudden movements, scars of his past. But with Emma by his side, he faced the world bravely. At a stand selling handmade collars, an older man leaned down and whispered to Max, "You're one lucky." "Dog, you know that?" Emma's throat tightened. "Lucky?" No, they were both lucky. As the sun dipped low and golden light bathed the town, Emma and Max made their way back home. The road was quiet, lined with oak trees dripping with moss. A light breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. At home, Emma lit a small fire in the hearth and curled up on the couch with a book. Max hopped up beside her, a new habit he had picked up, claiming half the couch with quiet authority. Emma didn't mind. She reached over, resting her hand on his back, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. They're in the quiet of their little house with the warmth of the fire crackling and the weight of Max against her side. Emma understood something deeper than words. Some rescues go both ways. She had saved Max from drowning, but Max had saved her from a life without hope. And together, they had built something no flood, no cruelty, no storm could ever wash away. Family. Not the kind you were born into, the kind you fight for. As she turned off the lamp and the house slipped into darkness, Emma whispered into the stillness, "Good night, Max. Thank you for finding me." Max's tail thumped once in reply, and the two of them drifted into a peace they had both fought so hard to earn. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Together, let's keep spreading messages of courage, compassion, and hope.